everyone, it's your favorite talking eggplant here, and today we're playing more Blackberry Honey. So previously they were talking about the Saint of Verena from Lottie's homeland. I'm sorry, I haven't heard of them. It doesn't ring a bell. Saint Verena is a Swiss saint. She used to be a nurse, and she devoted her life to the spiritual and physical care of young girls. Apparently, she was also very pretty. Lottie beamed and clasped her hands together. I too wish to live a pure and devout life as a good Christian, just like my favorite saint. You have a favorite saint? Surely, if one wants to be a good Christian, you shouldn't pick favorites. Oh, I know. Papa said much the same, but I can't help myself. She's depicted in a stained glass window in the church of St. Peter and Paul in my Andermatt, and she looks so very kind and benevolent, not to mention her hair. So you like this Swiss saint solely for her looks? That's awfully shallow, Lottie. It isn't shallow, at least not entirely. There's nothing wrong with liking pretty girls. Exactly. I support any saint who concerns herself with the welfare of maidens like ourselves. Sadly, I'm a woman, not a maiden. I think I'm a touch too old for your holy Saint Verena. Saint Verena would not discriminate, I am sure. Alright. You're starting to sound like a saint yourself. Saint Lottie. I think Lysla might make a nice saint. She's nice enough, but I doubt she can perform any miracles. None of us can. You know, I wouldn't mind being a saint. I've always wanted to appear on a stained glass window. You would look very nice. You think? It would suit you better than me. Now. Pride is a deadly sin, Lottie. What, really? I think so? You won't be going to heaven with that attitude. Oh my. I do not wish to cause any offense. The maids of Bly continued in this matter as they walked through the streets of Ellesmere, their feet striking against the ground. Lorena's skirt swirled about her ankles, the letter inside her pocket rustling with each step. The letter! Lorena had been so taken in by Lottie she almost forgotten. Oh, do excuse me. There is something I need to do before I return. Something you need to do, That sounds rather suspicious. I promise it won't take a minute. If you're late by so much as 30 seconds, you'll be in for the high jump. Mr. Lester runs a very tight ship, you know. You should know. You're the one always getting in trouble. I'm aware. I'll be as quick as I can. Not that it really concerns us, but the corners of Pauline's lips form an unpleasant smirk. If you're late back, Lorena, we won't cover for you. I know. And so the gaggle of maids left Lorena behind. Thoughts of Taohua, or Tilly, as Lorena had oh so cleverly termed in her letter, weighed heavily upon the young maid's mind. She had to get a second opinion. It had been impossible to think about anything but the older woman during the service. So consumed by Taohua she had been, and still was, she failed to realize where she was walking, until it was too late. Lorena recoiled, holding a hand to her cheek. Her jaw hurt. Had she just quite literally walked into somebody? My, you should watch where you're going, dear, or you might cause somebody some serious harm. Ooh, Nothing to say? Cat got your tongue? Well, Lorena flustered and glanced down at the ground. It didn't help the woman she'd walked into was rather pretty. She had brown hair that put Lorena in a mind of chestnuts. Her attire, meanwhile, was much like that of a school teacher, with a white blouse and a long, sensible skirt. She didn't look too dissimilar from Miss Aime, Lady Constance's governess. Neither was she alone. A blonde girl with a disagreeable scowl stood by the woman's side, her hands planted firmly against her hips. Upon closer inspection, Lorena realized that she knew these women. She'd never spoken to them before, but she had seen them in passing on more than one occasion. They frequented the Sunday service at St. Mary's too. It was a small world after all, and Ellesmere was smaller than most. A smirk captured the older woman's lips. She surveyed Lorena with an undisguised amusement. Now that I look at you properly, you are rather lovely. Lovely? I am? Indeed. I'm quite fond of soft, shy girls. Oh, please. Your kind are so very fun to play with, you know. Do give it a rest. The shorter girl rolled her eyes empathetically, in the manner of one who must have practiced their gesture a good deal before a full-length mirror. You should restrict your playing solely to the violin. I know, but when faced with a sweet young thing like this, how can I resist? You'll have to do your best. You know what Reverend Martyr says. Pits of hellfire and eternal damnation. Yes, I know. Honestly, you need to start leaving pretty girls alone. Ooh, that's so boring. The younger girl pulled a face. Do you even listen when you attend church, or is your head off in the clouds? I prefer to hum a little Bach under my breath while the venerable reverend goes on and on. It is true. Big sister. The younger sister shook her head. Her expression was incredulous. You are impossible. Indeed. So kawaii. Excuse me. I apologize if I was in the way, but I have somewhere I need to be. Oh, right. I'm sorry. Well, run along then. I trust I will be seeing you in due course. A mischievous smile. Miss Lorena Waugh? How does she know who I am? It was Monday, and Lorena found herself occupied with the arduous task of doing the laundry. The housekeeper, Miss Alicia Smith, had stripped a pile of bedsheets from the innumerable, unnecessary, guest rooms in Bly. These sheets had not been slept in for years, and Lorena doubted they would be put to use in the immediate future. Why, then, did she have to wash them? To the young maid, it seemed like nothing more than pointless busy work. Miss Smith's orders, however, were absolute. The washing was always done on Mondays. Miss Smith was a stickler for it. It was an unwritten rule at Bly. But perhaps it was not so unwritten after all, because Miss Smith had read about it in Estelle Wood's popular practical housekeeping guide. In any event, Lorena had managed to progress to the third stage of the long, laborious chore. She was boiling the linen in soapy water, stirring them with a wooden stick. Lorena sighed deeply. It didn't make her feel any better. This would be easier if she had help. But Pauline, who was supposed to aid her, had swaned off a good 20 minutes or so ago. Lorena had no idea when, or indeed if, she would return. That Pauline. She was always shirking her duties, all the while complaining about how very hard she worked. Lorena would like to give her a taste of her own medicine. If only she could become an avenging Valkyrie. But alas, she was just a maid. She gritted her teeth together. The smell of boiled linens assaulted her nostrils. It wasn't particularly pleasant. Washing clothes never was. Curse Miss Smith for her draconian rules, and curse Estelle Wood for her stupid practical housekeeping guide, and most of all, curse Pauline for being so incredibly, infuriatingly useless. Lorena's forearms hurt, her forehead beaded with sweat, her hair stuck to her skin. Why was she always charged with the most physically draining of tasks? Maybe it was because she was still the new girl. Maybe it was because of Pauline's underhanded dealings. Maybe it was because of Lady Constance didn't like her. Maybe it was a mix of all three. But there were also the rumors to take into account. They couldn't have helped. Perhaps this was supposed to be some sort of punishment. Everyone seemed to know what had transpired between Lorena and the Pickering family, even Lady Constance. And speaking of which... Are you enjoying yourself, maid? Shouldn't you be in the drawing room with Miss Aimee? Where I go and what I do with my spare time is of no concern to you. I suppose it isn't, no. What you do with your time, however, is a concern of mine. It concerns me greatly. Are you working, or are you just standing there? I was taking a short break, miss. My arms started to hurt. Your arms hurt? Oh, how terrible. I'm so sorry your arms hurt. This is your job, maid. I have no sympathy for you or your complaints. Lorena could believe that quite easily. Now I must be on my way, but if you think about taking another ill-deserved break, you know what will happen, don't you? I have a vague idea, miss. Good. Then you're not as stupid as you look. Bye. And with a selfish little smirk, the young mistress turned and picked her way through the rose garden. It looked like she was searching for something, but what? Lorena watched with mild interest, her lips pursed together. Well, like Lady Constance had said, it was none of her business, really. The 5th of April, Tuesday. Lori, have you heard the news? What news? Lorena, who had divested herself of her maid's garments and was in the midst of folding them, glanced over her shoulder and looked at Ada. Ada was sitting on the edge of her bed, still in her uniform. Her brown hair was tied into two stubby braids that rested against her shoulders. Though Ada had worked at Blythe for longer than Lorena, and had subsided on paltry meals for several years, her facial features had always been so rounded. She was short of stature, shorter even than Lorena, with the flat nose, rotund cheeks, and plump thighs. Pauline and Isobel frequently teased her about it, and one of the footmen, a smug man with a rakish, wicked look, called Ada Miss Piglet whenever she was within earshot. Lorena, however, thought Ada's outward appearance suited her personality to a T. Her body was soft and warm, just like she was. This will probably sound silly, but last night, or a few nights actually, I've been hearing some strange noises. Strange noises? Like what? It's hard to explain. Footsteps, I suppose? Is that so? Lottie, who had been combing her long hair, set the brush aside and chipped in excitedly. I have been hearing much the same. It has quite disturbed my beauty sleep. You know what they say. What do they say? No rest for the wicked. You think the source of these noises may be wicked? Oh my. Do you think, perhaps, it is a ghost? I hope not. I mean, I've never seen a ghost before, but I've heard they're quite scary. How marvelous. How exactly is that marvelous? Because ghosts are so very romantic, you see. I'm afraid I don't follow. How can you not? You are English. Your country is renowned for its ghost stories, yes? I think it's a lot of nonsense myself. Perhaps, but imagine. To love life so much you cannot stand to be parted from it, even when your body goes cold. Is that not wonderful? Lottie, with her Swiss sensibilities, had quite a curious understanding of the word wonderful. I have heard many ghost stories in my time, but to experience a haunting in person? Oh, that would be divine. I could ask for nothing more. Then I'll keep my eyes peeled for any ghosts, but I'm a bit doubtful. You're so admirable, Lorena. What do you mean? You, well... Ada's cheek flushed light pink. Thank you for taking me seriously. A lot of people don't, that's probably my fault. I'm always imagining things, silly things, and I lose focus. Quite. You always forget to sweep the staircase properly, Ada. I'm sorry. As you should be. Mr. Lester gave me an earful about the staircases earlier, and I wasn't the one who had been assigned to clean them. Please forgive me. I shan't. My back certainly shan't, at least. I had to pick up after your mess again, and I'm getting too old for all this malarkey. And that isn't all. It's certainly not. The carpets are still filled with dust after you beat them. And you couldn't polish your way out of a paper bag. How did you become a maid anyway? I don't want to cause any offense. Ada bit her plump lower lip and hung her head. She looked so defeated, Lorena scowled. You don't need to apologize, Ada. Lorena? Lorena had never cared for Pauline and Isobel. Between the two of them, they were just as bad as Lady Constance, but they were not rich enough to afford their airs and graces. They were simpering and sycophantic around Mr. Lester and Miss Smith, but they were downright cruel to their fellow maids simply because they could be. In a way, perhaps they were even worse than Lady Constance. At least she was unfailingly rude and impolite to everyone, regardless of their social status. You two. Lorena rounded on Pauline and Isobel. Hardly have a right to lecture Ada. Oh, what's this? Did we touch a nerve? Are you gonna cry about it, Lorena? Let me drink your tears. No, I'm not gonna cry, but I am gonna ask you to give it a rest. What a shame. You two hardly deserve to take the moral high ground when you waste so much time gossiping. If Mr. Lester gets mad at you, that's your problem. It has nothing to do with Ada. Oh, so you're trying to scold us. Is that it, Lorena? That's right. I'm scolding you because you deserve to get scolded. I treat my younger sisters exactly the same if they'd done anything wrong. Lorena, you don't need to... Oh, shush, Ada. Ada might have seen Lorena as some kind of hero, like the valiant John d'Arc, but that wasn't entirely true. Lorena wasn't that selfless, and she had more than a handful of her own grievances to air. You two have been difficult to work with since I can remember. Whenever you're meant to help me with anything, you wander off like you're too good to get your hands dirty. Where were you when we were supposed to be doing laundry this morning, Pauline? Where exactly did you go? Pauline, for her part, looked unmoved by Lorena's anger. Instead, she smiled smugly, her arms crossed around her middle. I received a summons from Miss Smith. She had another, more urgent task for me to attend to. That's what you say. Lorena's eyes flashed. But I don't believe you. Oh, Lorena. Poor paranoid Lorena. Pauline smirked. She didn't look remotely moved by Lorena's emotional appeal. If anything, she looked even crueler than before. You just don't understand. What is it I don't understand exactly? You should be thankful that I deigned to spend time with your kind at all. After all, who would willingly consort with a slut? The 10th of April, Sunday. Huge lore drop. It took a week before Lorena's mother replied to her letter. During this week, Lorena attended to her daily chores in an unspeakably foul mood. Pauline's unpleasant accusation had been bad enough, but Ada's concerns over the ghost of Bly continued. The young maid was so anxious over the supernatural specter, encouraged in part by Lottie, that she was unable to sleep during the night and had stolen into Lorena's bed for comfort on more than one occasion. Lorena's bed was narrow enough as it was. There was hardly enough room for one person, let alone two, but Lorena didn't have the heart to make Ada move. She was too soft for her own good. To further compound the issue, Lorena still felt anxious around the parlor maid, Tahua. Lorena skirted about her as though she was infected by the bubonic plague. Lorena didn't know why, but being around Tahua was uncomfortable. She'd said so as much in her last letter to her mother, scribbled hastily with shivering, sleep-deprived fingers. I don't understand her at all. It's like she was mocking me, but for something I couldn't change. I know it sounds petty, but I keep thinking about her and I can't sleep. I don't suppose it's that important in the grand scheme of things, but it must be if I can't stop thinking about it. And then, guilty that her latest letter to her dearest mother was nothing more than a list of grievances she had with Lady Constance, Lady Leonard, and the insufferable parlor maid, Lorena had hastily appended. But enough about that. How have you been? What about Alice? How tall is she now? It's been so long since I last saw her. She must have shot up. Her mother's response had been genial, but quizzical. She opened her letter with some general chit-chat about Ethel and Mary and Alice, which was always a comfort, and then addressed Lorena's issues with the parlor maid, Tahua. Or, as Lorena had written, because she had no idea how to spell Tahua's name, Tilly. Short for Matilda. Tahua was the most un-Matilda-like person Lorena had ever met. Not that there was a set way Matildas had to act, but it would have to do. Tilly was still better than Tahua. Tahua called her Lori enough. It was tit for tat, really. Well deserved. I'm sorry, dear, but I don't understand the problem, her mother had written. It sounds like Tilly was looking out for you. She might have been a bit harsh, but she wouldn't have said those things if she didn't care. Maybe you two could even become friends. The mere idea was enough to make Lorena snort in disbelief. Friends. Her mother seriously thought she could become friends with Tahua. Maybe Lorena could have become friends with Tilly, whoever that was, but Tahua, there was not a chance. Not a chance in hell. Lorena would rather make amends with Pauline than try and befriend Tahua. At least, that was what she told herself. The 12th of April, Tuesday. Miss Aimee Varens was not the first governess Lady Constance had ever had. Neither was she the first governess Lorena had seen attending to the needs of the wildly irascible Madame, even during the maid's brief 4 months at Bly. Before Miss Aimee Varens had been Miss Lillian Hurst. Lorena didn't remember Miss Lillian in great detail, as she had been fired for some misdemeanor or another during the second week of Lorena's employment, but she could recall, though vaguely, that Miss Lillian had been very tall and very blonde with piercing eyes. People with blue eyes be like, Miss Lillian hadn't seemed like the kind of woman who could be outsmarted by a pint-sized she-devil like Lady Constance. But Lady Constance, despite her mere handful of years residing upon God's green earth, could be even wilier than a fox. Before Miss Lillian had been a string of governesses Lorena had never met. Miss Penelope Howard, Miss Catherine Storr, Miss Adrienne Spence. None of them had remained in Bly for longer than a year. Miss Aimee Behrens was Lady Constance's newest tutor, and Lorena felt rather sorry for her. She had an even more unforgiving job than Lorena did. Miss Aimee was French and hailed from Lyons. She had fiery red hair, which one would assume denoted a similarly fiery personality, making her out for the ballet, perhaps, or the opera. But it was quite the contrary. Miss Aimee was a softly spoken, retiring woman who would sooner have swallowed her tongue than stand upon a stage. It was unthinkable that such a woman could rein in Lady Constance. Lorena had known it was impossible from the very beginning. Even Lady Constance would chew her up and spit her back out. But that didn't stop Miss Aimee from trying. She tried so hard, it was almost heartbreaking. Oh, there you are, maid. Lady Constance pushed her list of French verbs to one side, almost sliding it off the circular table. Miss Aimee, as was her wont, caught it before it could hit the floor. Do you have my mid-morning snack? Indeed, the cook was very thorough in her preparations. I hope, for your sake, it's something sweet. I can't focus without sweets. They're coconut macaroons, miss. I hope they are to your liking. Well... Lady Constance's snub nose wrinkled. It was evident even before she spoke that Lorena's offering was not to her liking at all. But perhaps the French verbs had worn even Lady Constance down, because she relented. It's not what I would have chosen, but they're better than nothing. Set the plate by my side, please, and don't jostle any of my things. I'm surprised she even said please. Certainly. Lady Constance peered at the macaroons with a discerning eye, like a master jeweler inspecting a freshly mined diamond. When it came to sweets, young girls had two stomachs. Lorena had heard that said before, and it was certainly the case with Lady Constance. Her taste in saccharine sweetmeats was unparalleled. What a sentence. Sweetmeats. I suppose they will do. Oh, wonderful. Thank you for taking such good care of the young Mademoiselle Lorena. Well, it's my job. Lady Constance clicked her tongue against the roof of her mouth. I don't know if you've realized yet, Aimee, but this girl here, Lady Constance gestured at Lorena, is only a maid. You don't need to thank her. She's probably too stupid to understand you. Now you look here. Oh, Mademoiselle Constance, surely you jest. She might be a maid, but she's a hard-working girl, is she not? Well, I wonder. A smile played at the corners of Lady Constance's lips. It was not entirely pleasant. Tell me, maid, what do you do when Reverend Marner's services finish on Sunday? Lorena shifted, suddenly guilty. She looked down at the floor and the patterned rug that covered it. I go back to Bly, naturally. You say it's natural for you to come back here, but you're always so very late. I'm not so very late. Silence. You were a quarter of an hour later returning to Bly than the other maids last Sunday, and the Sunday before that. It might not sound like much to a dullard like you, but it all adds up to a considerable amount of time. I didn't realize. Of course you didn't. You've never learnt how to do basic mathematics, have you? Lady Constance's eyes roved up and down Lorena's form. Her lip curled. Then let me phrase it in a way even you can understand, maid. You have wasted more than an hour during the last month alone. A whole hour. Now do you understand the gravity of your sins? Sins? That seemed a little harsh coming from a tiny mouth like Lady Constance's, but Lorena had no room to argue. Lady Constance had already outmaneuvered her. This is sloppy, slovenly behavior. I won't abide by it. You maids are only allowed to attend church every Sunday out of the goodness of my mother's heart, but you've been taking advantage of that. You're using your faith as an excuse to take time off on our good graces. I never intended to, What you intend is neither here nor there. I imagine you don't even understand what the most perplexing thing about all this is. What? I spoke to Pauline earlier, and she told me, well, I could hardly believe what she told me. Pauline, was it? Lorena scowled. She couldn't help herself. The mere mention of Pauline's name often had this effect on her. Pauline said you were late returning to Bly because you were going to the post office, of all things. Now, as a lowly, uneducated maid, what purpose is there in you going to the post office? I doubt you can read or write. Well, I know it might seem unbelievable, but I do know how to read and write, miss. Oh? Lady Constance didn't look surprised by this news, surprising though it was. Her face remained calm, like a still puddle of water after a rainfall. It was even more disconcerting than outright anger. And how, pray tell, did you learn how to do that? My father taught me. So your father was a scholar, was he? Not exactly. He was a sailor, but he went to a village school when he was a child, and he learned a little here and there. He was always fond of stories. Robinson Crusoe and the Arabian Nights. He read them to me when I was a child. Oh my! How interesting. It seems we have an undiscovered genius in the house. This whole time, should I have been curtsying to you? Mademoiselle Constance, please, your lesson. In a minute, I may. I'm not through with this Sappho here. Does she know? Lady Constance's lip curled. Tell me, maid, if you really are so very intelligent, as you seem to think, then why don't you help me with my French reading? Okay, so I look up what does Sappho mean in slang? It's literally... Sappho was the name of an ancient Greek poet who was born and died in Lesbos, Greece. Well, you learn something new every day. French? That's right. That shouldn't be too much of a challenge for you, should it? After all, Lady Constance raised her eyebrows. You know how to read and write, you clever girl. Well, I've never studied French before, and that wasn't a question. It was an order. Come here. Lorena glanced about the drawing room awkwardly, but there was nobody to save her. Miss Aimee certainly couldn't. There was nothing she could do. Lady Constance was in a particularly sadistic mood today. Her French always did this to her. It was no secret that French was Lady Constance's least favorite subject, and the fact her new governess was a Frenchwoman herself was no small source of scorn from the young girl. Fearing for her immediate well-being, Lorena hastened to Lady Constance's side. The young girl took a slim volume of French fables from her desk and handed them to Lorena. Lorena took the book and opened it. She stared at the words on the page, but they had no meaning. They might as well have been written in Greek. Hey, what was I just talking about? I wonder if that was on purpose or if that was just coincidence on the author's part. Well, Lady Constance's devilish smile grew wider. What are you waiting for? Start reading, please. But Oh, are you saying La Fontaine is too difficult for you? Well, too bad. I'm still waiting. Well, Lorena cleared her throat. Fingers trembling, her face beat red, she began. La sigale ayant chanti tuliet a... But Lorena had not gone through more than 2 lines when Lady Constance interrupted her. Well, that was terrible, and I thought you could read. Lorena dipped her head, her face burnt bright red. She could read, basic English at least. French was way over her head. Didn't Lady Constance know how unfair she was being? I think she does. She's just doing this on purpose. But that didn't sway the young mistress. You see? Lady Constance gave Miss Aime a sidelong glance. If this genius of a maid can't understand La Fontaine, then I fail to see why I should be expected to. But mademoiselle, French is important. You are expected to understand the gist of the language, at least, so you can integrate more easily into high society. And why should I need to integrate? I'm already part of high society. But nothing. I'm tired of these silly games. If you want to teach anybody French, teach this foolish maid. But I have no interest in it whatsoever. And with that, Lady Constance got to her feet and marched out of the drawing room. Miss Aime watched her retreating back, a frown on her face. Oh dear. Lorena was inclined to agree with her. Lady Constance hadn't even tried any of her macaroons. How could she be so selfish? Thoroughly humiliated, Lorena stalked down the hallways of Bly with a face like thunder. Why was Lady Constance so unreasonable, expecting her to be fluent in French of all things, and then using Lorena's incompetence as an excuse to escape? It beggared belief. How could one little girl be so very shameless? If you were my younger sister, I'd spank you in a second. That's what you deserve, you charlatan. Her feet thumped across the carpet hard. By this point, she had worked herself up into such a state, she completely failed to notice the presence of another person. Oh? Until it was too late. Lorena stumbled, her eyes wide, her fingers slackening. She dropped the broom to the floor, where it struck the wall with a dull thud, before gravity pulled it back down to earth. It rolled several times before bumping against the side of Lorena's foot, where it came to a standstill. Lorena had come to a standstill too. It was impossible for her to move, even if she wanted to. Thanks to her thoughts, which always seemed to trip her up, quite literally this time, she had managed to run right into the one person she did not want to run into. Oh, I got a unexpected embrace. Take a sudden tumble. Hello, Lori. That was quite the greeting you gave me. Oh, Lorena blinked at the older woman with wide eyes. Her eyes were so wide, in fact, it looked like her irises had been swallowed up by her whites. What? Her cheeks, meanwhile, were slowly starting to turn pink. Why, of all the embarrassing things... Are you alright? You look rather flustered. Tired, too. Have you not been getting enough sleep? I get more than enough sleep. Well, that's good. One must look after their health. It wouldn't reflect well on Lady Leonard if one of her precious maids collapsed from fatigue. Well, Lorena tried to soothe the stammering of her heart. That was hard when she didn't know why it was stammering to begin with. And her mother had thought she could become friends with Talhua, or Tilly as she had been termed. If Lorena's mother ever met the woman, Lorena was sure she would change her mind in a heartbeat. It was the only proper thing to do. Lorena Serena inhaled and took a step backwards, then 2, then 3. 3 steps seemed like a sensible distance to her. It wasn't so very far she would look foolish trying to continue the conversation, but not so close Tahua's presence could unsettle her. I'm gonna end that video right there. Sorry to leave it on a cliffhanger, but I don't want to make the videos too long. Also, I'm still playing around with like the audio. I'm probably gonna sound a lot different in this than the last one and the first one, but I'll get it sorted out eventually, whenever that is. But thank you for watching this video. If you made it this far, thank you. I appreciate it. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye!